essential link between domestic and state religion. Rome's survival was thought to depend on the sacred status and ritual purity. Vestals found guilty of inchastity were willingly buried alive, to expiate their offense and avoid the imposition of blood guilt on those who inflicted the punishment. 319, 320, Temples and festivals. Rome's major public temples were contained within the city's sacred, augural boundary, Pomerium, which had supposedly been marked out by Romulus, with Jupiter's approval. The Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, Jupiter, best and greatest, stood on the Capitoline Hill. Among the settled areas outside the Pomerium was the nearby Aventine Hill. It was traditionally associated with Romulus' unfortunate twin Remus, and in later history with the Latins, and the Roman plebs. The Aventine seems to have functioned as a place for the introduction of foreign deities. 322, in 392, Camillus established a temple there to Juno Regina, Etruscan Veii's protective goddess. Later introductions include Summonus, c. 278, Vortumnus c. 264, and at some time before the end of the 3rd century, Minerva. 323, while Ceres' Aventine temple was most likely built at patrician expense. To mollify the plebs, the patricians brought the Magna Mater, Great Mother of the Gods, to Rome as their own Trojan ancestral goddess, and installed her on the Palatine along with her distinctively Roman Gauli priesthood. 324, Romulus was said to have pitched his augural tent atop the Palatine. Beneath its southern slopes ran Thesacid Way, next to the former palace of the kings, Regia, the house of the Vestals and temple of Vesta. Close by were the Lupercal shrine and the cave where Romulus and Remus were said to have been suckled by the she-wolf. On the flat area between the Aventine and Palatine was the Circus Maximus, which hosted chariot races and religious games. Its several shrines and temples included those to Rome's. Inside the Temple of Mercury at Be, a swimming pool for a Romanbathe, built during the late Roman Republic, 321, and containing one of the largest domes in the world before the building of the pantheon indigenous sun god, Sol, the moon goddess Luna, the grain store god, Consus, and the obscure goddess Mercia. A temple to Hercules stood in the Forum Boreum, near the circus starting gate. Every district, vicus, of the city had a crossroads shrine to its own protective laws. Whereas Republican, and thereafter, Imperial, Romans marked the passage of years with the names of their ruling consuls, their calendars marked the anniversaries of religious foundations to particular deities, the days when official business was permitted, fars, and those when it was not, nefas. The Romans observed an 8-day week, law courts were closed and markets were held on the 9th day. Each month was presided over by a particular, usually major deity. The oldest calendars were lunar, structured around the most significant periods in the agricultural cycle, and to religious duties required to yield a good harvest. In the earliest Republican era, patrician power is evident in their control of civil and religious laws, and the extraordinary intricacies of Rome's calendars. 325, in the military. Denarius of Caesar, minted just before his murder, in 44 BC. It weighs first Roman coin bearing the portrait of a living person. The Lichaius and Cilalus depicted behind his shield refer to his augurate and pontificate. The reverse with Venus alludes to his claimed descent from goddess. 326. Before any campaign or battle, Roman commanders took auspices or haruspices, to seek the god's opinion regarding the likely outcome. Military success was achieved through a combination of personal and collective virtues, roughly, manly virtue, and divine will. Triumphal generals dressed as Jupiter Capitolinus, and laid the victor's laurels at his feet. Religious negligence, or lack of virtus, provoked divine wrath and led to military disaster. 327, 328, military oaths dedicated the oath-taker's life to Rome's gods and people. Defeated soldiers were expected to take their own lives rather than survive as captives. Examples of devotio, as performed by the Dicianuos, in which soldiers offered and gave their lives to the dei inferi, gods of the underworld, in exchange for Roman victory, were celebrated as the highest good. Some of Republican Rome's leading deities were required through military actions. In the earliest years of the Republic, Camillus promised Veii's goddess Juno a temple in Rome as incentive for her desertion, evocatio. He conquered the city in her name, brought a cult statue to Rome with miraculous ease, and dedicated a temple to her on the Aventine Hill. 329. First known temple to Venus was built to fulfill a vow made by Q. Fabius Gerges during battle against the Samnites. 330. 331. Following Rome's disastrous defeat by Carthage in the Battle of Lake Trasimene. 217. Rome laid siege to Eryx, a Sicilian ally of Carthage. The city's patron deity, whom the Romans recognized as a warlike version of Venus, was persuaded to change her allegiance and was rewarded with a magnificent temple on the Capitoline Hill, as one of Rome's 12 dii consents. Venus Victrix Waste helped to grant her favorites a relatively easy victory, worthy of an ovation and myrtle crown. 332, 333, cities, towns and villas. City of Rome. The ruins of the Servian Wall, built during 4th century BC, one of the earliest ancient Roman defensive walls. Life in the Roman Republic revolved around the city of Rome and its 7 hills. The most important governing, administrative and religious institutions were concentrated at its heart, on and around the Capitoline and Palatine hills. The city rapidly outgrew its original sacred boundary, Pomone, and its first city walls. Further growth was constrained by an inadequate freshwater supply. Rome's first aqueduct, 312, built during the Punic War's crisis, provided a plentiful, clean supply. The building of further aqueducts led to the city's expansion and the establishment of public baths, thermae, as a central feature of Roman culture. 334, 335. The city also had several theatres, 336, gymnasiums, and many taverns and brothels. Living space was at a premium. Some ordinary citizens and freedmen of middling income might live in modest houses, but most of the population lived in apartment blocks, insulae, literally islands, where the better off might rent an entire ground floor, and the poorest a single, possibly windowless room at the top, with few or no amenities. Nobles and rich patrons lived in spacious, well-appointed town houses. They were expected to keep open house for their peers and clients. A semi-public atrium typically functioned as a meeting space, and a vehicle for display of wealth, artistic taste, and religious piety. Noble atria were also display areas for ancestor masks, images. 337. Most Roman towns and cities had a forum and temples, as did the city of Rome itself. Aqueducts brought water to urban centers. 338. Landlords generally resided in cities and left their estates in the care of farm managers. Culture. Clothing. The basic Roman garment was the Greek-style tunic, worn knee-length and short-sleeved, or sleeveless, for men and boys, and ankle-length and long-sleeved for women and girls. The toga was distinctively Roman. It was thought to have begun during the early Roman kingdom, as a plain woolen shepherd's strap, worn by both sexes, all classes, and all occupations, including the military. 340. By the Middle Republic, citizen women had abandoned it for the less bulky, Greek-style stula, and the military used it only for off-duty ceremonies. 341. The toga became a mark of male citizenship, a statement of social degree. 342. Convention also dictated the type, color and style of calcei, ankle boots, appropriate to each level of male citizenship: red for senators, brown with crescent-shaped buckles for equites, and plain tanned for plebs. The orator, c. 100 BC, an Etrusco-Roman statue of a republican senator, wearing toga praetexta and senatorial shoes, compared to the voluminous, costly impractical togas of the imperial era. The republican era type is frugal and skimpy, exigua. 339. The whitest, most voluminous togas were worn by the senatorial class. High-ranking magistrates, priests and citizens' children were entitled to a purple-bordered toga praetexta. Triumphal generals wore an all-purple gold-embroidered toga picta, associated with the image of Jupiter and Rome's former kings, but only for a single day. Republican more simultaneously fostered competitive display and attempted its containment to preserve at least a notional equality between peers, and reduce the potential threats of class envy. 343. Togas, however, were impractical for physical activities other than sitting in the theater, public oratory, and attending the solutions, greeting, sessions, of rich patrons. Most Roman citizens, particularly the lower class of plebs, seem to have opted for more comfortable and practical garments, such as tunics and cloaks. Luxurious and highly colored clothing had always been available to those who could afford it, particularly women of the leisured classes. There is material evidence for cloth of gold, name, as early as the 7th century. 344. By the 3rd century, significant quantities of raw silk was being imported from China. 345. The Lex Oppia. Tom. Banquet scene, fresco Herculaneum, Italy, c. 50 B. Coriander. The orator, c. 100 BC, an Etrusco-Roman statue of a republican senator, wearing toga praetexta and senatorial shoes, compared to the voluminous, costly impractical togas of the imperial era. The republican era type is frugal and skimpy, exigua. 339. The whitest, most voluminous togas were worn by the senatorial class. High-ranking magistrates, priests and citizens' children were entitled to a purple-bordered toga praetexta. Triumphal generals wore an all-purple gold-embroidered toga picta, associated with the image of Jupiter and Rome's former kings, but only for a single day. Republican more simultaneously fostered competitive display and attempted its containment to preserve at least a notional equality between peers, and reduce the potential threats of class envy. 343. Togas, however, were impractical for physical activities other than sitting in the theater, public oratory, and attending the solutions, greeting, sessions, of rich patrons. Most Roman citizens, particularly the lower class of plebs, seem to have opted for more comfortable and practical garments, such as tunics and cloaks. Luxurious and highly colored clothing had always been available to those who could afford it, particularly women of the leisured classes. There is material evidence for cloth of gold, name, as early as the 7th century. 3.
Oh no. Okay. This is how my life is, so just start again. Got page 34. So let's start, but we have the news. I think No, let's continue because I never get finished because if I had to wait for the news, I will have to wait like 40 minutes. Don't do that. Let's start again. Let's start to upload. You'll not start to upload anything.